Shalom, everyone.
Shalom Aleichem.
Welcome to This Week in Mormons. Excited to be here with you this week. We are at peace because we had General Conference, and now...
Jeff, this is the lamest intro you've ever done. I mean, of all, like Easter, you have better intros. Why are you so morose this morning?
I'm not. Sorry, do you want me? I can start over if you want me to.
No, I mean, you're fine.
Everybody!
You're fine.
I can do it like last week. We can sing more bad 90s songs if that's really what gets you going.
That was my favorite show, maybe of all time.
But this week it'll be devoted to...
Sugar Ray Fly throughout the entire show.
Anytime
you can integrate Mark McGrath.
No, this week's is going to be devoted to late 90s ska revival. So I elect for the Mighty Mighty Bosstones.
I only know the Mighty Mighty Bosstones. I think they were the only ones that participated in the 90s ska revival. There was no one else there.
Oh, Al, there were the Hippos. There was Real Big Fish. There was Safe Ferris. There was the then Pharmaceutical Bandits. Jeffrey's Fan Club. That was a band. Oh, so many bands.
I've never heard of any of these people. None of them made it to the revival.
Jeffrey's Fan Club was so great that their
you
trombone...
only care about Jeffrey's Fan Club because your name is Jeffrey. Otherwise, you would have never heard of them.
Their trombonist actually played keyboard on one of my band's recordings. It was a big deal.
Let's never acknowledge that there is actually a role called the trombonist.
Trombonist. He played the trombone.
No, that's not a real thing. We're going to pretend like that doesn't exist.
Every now and then I've gone to revisit some of the old ska days and just give it a listen and see how it was, and I can't. Like, I make it through 2 songs and I just say this is awful. How did I listen to albums and albums of this?
Knock on wood.
How did I spend like all afternoon listening to Voodoo Glow Skulls and thinking that it was the best music ever? I just don't know. I do not know.
It would creep in on you. You can't be held accountable for that time.
And here's the difference. I loved punk and ska. I can still go back and listen to punk albums and thoroughly enjoy them.
I don't know how. Go on.
But it depends on the band. But I can still enjoy it a little bit. But even those do get a little bit older. Like one time I tried to listen to MXPX all day last year. It was difficult. But ska.
I like that this was last year because I know for a fact 2 years ago you could still listen to MXPX all day and have no problem with it. So this is just in the last year you've matured to the point where all of a sudden that's not savory.
Where's the evidence that 2 years ago?
Because we would go on a road trip and you would try and listen to MXPX all day.
I don't think that ever happened. All I remember is
their rendition of 500 Miles by the Proclaimers on repeat for maybe 10 hours. You are unfazed.
That is not true.
I'm bleeding out my eyes.
I believe you wanted to keep listening to it. I remember it because that song is etched in my brain while we drove through southeast Montana on the way to Billings late at night. That's when it was going down. I remember it.
That was a dream time. A dream time.
Yeah, the best time of that. Remember how we thought, hey, we're in Billings, Montana. No big deal to find a hotel, right? Not so much.
And there was like the adult.
They were having it was like a Maxim convention or something.
Yeah, it was like all these adult actors and actresses were there. We're like, every hotel is full. Well,
it was a very strange evening. But the best part, as longtime listeners have heard this before, when we met Gollum in person.
Oh my gosh. The lady at the hotel?
Yeah, that one hotel we tried to get into, and she saw Brock sleeping hiding in the back seat.
Who's this? Yeah, that was a scary night.
This was basically a woman with she was balding.
She had
and it was
male pattern baldness going on.
A lot of thinning was going on.
One tooth and yeah, it was a scary moment.
But she was terrifying. All baldness stuff aside, she was just terrifying.
Baldness aside, this woman was still... take it as a given that everybody that is bald, terrifying.
Yes, that is an axiom.
My own father included. Terrifying.
Nah, your dad's pretty charming.
He's like a koala bear with that hair. Just
koalas are not bears, Alan. Koalas are marsupials. It is a misnomer when people call koalas bears. They are not bears in any way, shape, or form. I demand you redact.
They have teeth and claws, Jeff. I thought that was all you needed to be a bear.
Almost, but they also have pouches. So there's that.
I've got teeth, Jeff.
Yeah, but you don't have a pouch.
Wait, koalas have pouches?
Yeah, they're marsupials, dude.
They're kangaroos at this point.
I think they have pouches. I should know.
Do they carry their young in them, or do they just put little bamboo things in them?
I once watched.
Snacks for conference.
No, they carry their young, man. They're marsupials. That's how marsupials roll. Do you even know what a marsupial is?
I love you keep throwing out marsupials like I've somehow cared about what a marsupial is.
You need to know the taxonomy. I know marsupials
only from Madagascar 1, 2, and 5.
I don't think there are any marsupials in Madagascar.
Well, the lemurs?
Lemurs aren't marsupials.
Oh, never mind then. I thought they were.
Right? Or are they? Man, boy, am I getting confused now.
Anyway,
maybe there might be a lemur in Australia.
We digress. We have a lot to cover today.
Yeah,
there's 10 hours of conference that need to be summarized in our 1 hour.
Yes, but before we do, I just want to see how you're doing. I want to know about the feelings of your heart, the music of your heart, even if you want to go that route.
Yeah. I'm good. I'm back in Salt Lake. I flew to Salt Lake so I could watch conference alone in my apartment, away from kids and not in the conference center. This is my goal for every conference anymore. I want to watch it as alone as possible.
I can't believe you did not go march down the street and at least try to get some footage of the things.
Well, the weather was unpleasant, Jeff.
But you could have taken pictures of like ordained women and other folks involved in.
It was raining. It was raining until like 10 minutes until had it been sunnier, I would have gone and participated in their demonstrations and seen all that hubbub.
It's not a demonstration. They were merely waiting for tickets.
Well, and then they all stood in a line and one by one asked if they could go in.
Here's one thing I don't fully get about that. Unrelated to the debate in and of itself about ordained women. They just wanted to get overflow tickets to go in the tabernacle. But when you go see conference overflow in the tabernacle, priesthood or other, it's just a video feed.
Yeah.
So I understand the symbolism of it. You're in Temple Square. It's the tabernacle. I get it. But wouldn't the main push be to actually go in the conference center where one is there in person? Because otherwise, what's the difference between watching that video feed in any location other than the symbolism that I mentioned a second ago? I just think that's curious.
Sure, curious. Yeah. Well, I think because of the letter that said if they came over to the conference center, they had to stand in the protesting zone. I think that's probably what drove them over to the.
But the protest zone is just the street. Basically, it's anywhere outside of Temple Square or off of the church's property in front of the conference center. It's just the publicly owned sidewalk. That's the protest zone.
Kate Kelly is passionate about this, but she does not want to go to jail.
I don't want her to go to jail either. I don't want anybody to go to jail or get excommunicated for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, so actually, really quick on that. They had an increase in numbers. Ordained women did. Just sort of. We can talk about this for a minute. Yes,
we can talk about it for a minute. Sure. Yeah. Why not?
So increase in numbers. They said they had about 500-ish.
But
Deseret News reported about 200.
Yeah, most independent estimates say it was about 200, not 5.
I mean, I don't know. So after Elder Oaks' talk, wherein he just clarified sort of the church's stance,
which we'll
on
get
women
to
in the priesthood,
yeah,
right,
sure.
Do you anticipate this? Like, is that enough of an answer, or will this continue? I mean, I can't. Well, and I won't negate the value of bringing this topic up for discussion. Right? There's meaning in discussing and questioning, and if that's something that you're wondering about, it's a great question to have. But like, how do you? I mean, do you just continue sort of pushing against that same wall, or what do you do from here?
As far as I can tell, they're just going to soldier on.
Business as usual. The Oaks conversation did not help at all, right? Him actually saying, "No, we've looked at this. This isn't what we want to do."
I don't know. I feel like it would for some reason have to come
because their mainstay was we just want somebody to ask if it, like, they want the brethren to go and ask God. That's what they were pushing for. They were like, we don't need it to be. We don't want you to change because of us. We want a somebody up there to actually go and pray about it.
Yeah. Well, now I think that the exemption now will be Elder Oaks is one thing, but I kind of feel like unless this basically comes from First Presidency letterhead, it's never going to be considered enough of a direct response in a way. I don't know. I'm not part of their inner workings. I think they're just going to keep going for it because, why not?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Whoa, I'm talking to Siri.
Leave Siri out of this.
Siri, what do you think?
Oh, my goodness. I do
That'd
feel
be a great addition to our podcast.
Here's the thing, though. I think we just try to be objective about ordained women. Everyone has their opinions. But a lot of social media is pretty mean to them, especially I looked for a lot of tweets kind of in between the sessions before priesthood session when I knew they were kind of on their march or whatever, to go get in to see the session. And people aren't very kind. People are very mean.
You'll notice that as part of the culture in our church, which we saw as one of the themes, I think, through conference, sort of addressing that. But I feel like Mormons in general, if there's any sense of you are not falling in line with what we know and believe, they react with trying to ostracize you and push you out. Right? The way that they protect the inside is by pushing everybody out that disagrees. And there's been a lot of attention from the brethren saying, whoa. We're not here to push people out, right? It's okay to question. It's okay to ask and seek and be a believer and not a knower. Like all of that's okay. And there's nowhere in the teachings of Christ to say, if you don't agree with what I say, get away from me. So we need to be careful about that. I mean, especially I noticed the same thing, especially as Oaks was discussing this. There was a lot of like,
it was
here comes the boom. Now sit down.
Yeah, take that. Yeah.
And where is the Christian tone in all of that, right?
It's not. Yeah, exactly.
It's not.
So I agree. We have to be careful. And I think the great thing we can appreciate in all of this, were this 20 years ago, I definitely think stronger disciplinary action would have taken place already.
Oh, sure.
We would have a September 6th situation on our hands. And so it's a great thing that we don't. It's not.
What is the September 6th situation? What does that reference to?
There were 6 prominent scholars, basically, in the church, were regarded as dissenters and apostates, and they were all excommunicated within weeks of each other. It was a rough episode in church history. And really
When was that?
What?
When was that?
It was about 20 years ago. It was the early 90s.
Huh.
A lot of people, some of them have come back and even been rebaptized into the faith. Others have not. But September 6th was an interesting little episode there in church history. And I'm glad. I don't think we'll have that ever again. I believe we've opened ourselves up at least a bit to saying that discussions are okay.
Right.
We can discuss. It would cross the line, though, I think, if they ever felt that, like anything else, anybody was leading people into apostasy or into seeking false leadership, etc. The usual thing. So we'll have to see.
Okay.
Anyway, conference was most excellent. On the whole, I enjoyed it quite a bit. And we're going to go through a lot of stuff today, see if we can get through lots of the material, our impressions, things that happened. First off, I would like to say that after I took a lunch hour to write a whole article about my temple predictions for this conference, explaining in detail the rationale.
That was a great post.
Using demographics and projections. After that, President Munson gets up, clearly knowing that people are expecting temple announcements at this point, because it almost felt like he went out of his way to remind us, we are not announcing any temples at this time.
Yeah.
Usually they just don't say anything. There were also no temple announcements last conference, but nobody thought much of it. But this time he went out of his way to say there would be none, and to remind us that there are many, many temples under construction, because we have 142 dedicated right now, I think. And there's going to be 170 by the time they're done with all of them that have been announced or under construction. So that's pretty cool. So
yeah, that's great, man.
Good for that. The work will go forward, apparently, though, not in Richmond, Virginia, or Layton, Utah.
Where it was predicted.
So just look in 6 months. I'm just going to change the date on that post and just republish it and say my predictions remain the same. Live with it. There we go. Elder Holland, Elder Holland was the leadoff batter this conference. What did you think?
He was a strong leader. His quote that I really liked was he kind of addressed something that I feel like is a theme in our Mormon culture right now, where he said, He said that Christ-like love, if Christ-like love is our banner, we need to remember that Christ-like love was always accompanied by righteousness. I believe the phrasing was Christ-like love is the greatest need we have on the planet because righteousness was always supposed to accompany it. I feel like that's been a trend where we get much more focused, well, not, myself included, where I'm like, listen, it's less about like nitpicking commandments and little things like that, and more about like love and feeling love and showing love. And like if people can feel the Christ-like love in us, then they'll be brought to be better. But his was a great reminder that it's, there's the need for righteousness to accompany it.
Definitely. And what I took down for a lot of my notes and looking at even our Twitter feed and those of others, one thing, he basically kind of said discipleship has costs. And throughout this conference, I felt like there was sort of a clarion call to remind everybody that, and even as Elder Holland said, that a lot of people want comfortable gods, ones who don't rock the boat, let alone row the boat. People want a comfortable God that just puts up with them. And Elder Holland had to remind us that, hey, God expects things of us, and that involves sacrifice, that involves effort, that involves taking initiative and doing things. There is no easy way out in this case. And I saw that throughout a lot of talks, actually.
Yeah, I think there was like 7 obedience talks. And what was his? Defend your beliefs with courtesy and compassion, but defend them.
Yeah, defend them.
Right?
I also liked his quote when he said the alternative to all of this, basically if we're not obedient, is the alternative is to have our house left unto us desolate, which I just thought was a cool line. Very biblical.
Yeah. No, Holland was a strong leader or leadoff hitter on that. I mentioned pure Christ-like love can change the world. I mean, it's I love the idea of the banner being Christ-like love. A great reminder that we can't have that and not be keeping the commandments, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and hold on. Think about that for a second. Can we have like pure Christ-like love and not be keeping the commandments? Is that?
Can we have Christ-like love and not? Well, I mean, I would.
Because
I don't know. I would think so.
Jeffrey R. Holland said that it was always supposed to be accompanied by righteousness, right? But I'm trying to think. Like, I know some people that I feel like can just love me, but I feel like the ones that I feel the purest love from, or like the people that I know in my life, as I'm thinking about this, that it is accompanied by righteousness.
Yeah. Well, it has to be.
Yeah. All right. I believe that. I'm on board. I'm on board.
So yeah, but you know what? At the end of the day, being a true disciple.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, being a true disciple means you got to be loving, but it also means you have to, being a disciple means that people aren't going to always be happy about it. Like Elder Holland even said, "What would Jesus do?" is not always going to be a popular response.
If love is our watchword, we have to remove any hint of advocacy of transgression. Thought that was a good one. And we're commanded to forgive, but warned not to condone. Right? So Jesus always commanded to forgive, but he never, ever condoned the sin, which Definitely. I thought was interesting too. So as we, in our own life, right, like trying to sort out how to build that person in us, how to forgive people and love, but not condone the sin and say that what they did is okay, more just help them feel that love and that repenting spirit.
There we
go. Then moving on to Amato.
No, Elder Razband. Forgot Elder Razband.
Oh, that's right.
Elder Razband gave a great talk that I felt like so much of it was centered around Mosiah 4. And he definitely gave, I thought, one of the stronger talks regarding compassion, walking in someone else's shoes, truly developing what actual empathy is, sharing one another's burdens. He used the model, of course.
We are the Lord's hands.
Yeah, he talked about the tornadoes in Oklahoma last year. I love that he asked President Monson, like, is there anything you want me to say to these people? And President Monson just said, just tell them that I love them, that I'm praying for them, and please thank them for everyone. Please thank everyone who is helping. And that's true. Discipleship is sharing one another's burdens. It is not trying to just assess someone else's burden and look at it from an outside perspective. It's truly taking upon the needs of others on our own shoulders. It's a big deal.
Yeah, well, and that we have a responsibility, right, to bear one another's burdens. I kind of love that imagery of sustaining means to share the burden sort of thing of like just jumping in there. I think his was one that reminded me of we have a saying in the church, the STP, the same 10 people, right? It's the same 10 people that set up the meeting, that take down the chairs, that clean up in the church, it's just how it is, and everybody else leaves, they come and enjoy everything, and then you have the same 10 people that are doing that extra work. And it would be amazing to just see our church kind of spin on that and start really showing up, everybody chip in and share those
Step
burdens.
it up, yeah.
That'd be amazing.
And the other big thing to remember is that service does not have to always be some big project. We almost always circle it around. Somebody is moving, someone needs their fence painted, whatever else. Service is an everyday state of mind. And that's really what we should all aspire to. That's what Christ would have us do. Just help out with whatever's around us all the time. And we're happier, and people around us will be happy. It's addictive, honestly. It really is.
Uh-huh.
And then we had Elder Amato, who more than anything told me that the time has come that we need to let people give talks in their native language and just have subtitles, because the talks are submitted beforehand. So just translate it and just put the subtitle under there. It's great. Because he's a great guy, but it wasn't always easy to understand.
Hard.
Yeah.
It was hard.
But
focus on the atonement.
He talked about that Christ completely submitted himself to the Father, completely. I think it's very easy as mortals to maybe want to give 78% of ourselves to the Father, and be a little hold back maybe on a couple percent here and there.
At each moment of his suffering, the Redeemer showed exceptional self-control. I thought that was kind of an interesting piece.
There we go. Linda S. Reeves, everybody, the second counselor in the Relief Society presidency, spoke after
Loved
that.
her.
Yeah, she has 13 children. That alone is crazy. That doesn't have anything to do with her talk, but that's just nuts.
All right.
But she gave a strong talk. She gave a very good.
Her pornography. She spoke on pornography a little bit, which I thought was interesting to have in a Saturday morning session.
Yeah.
Also, it was sort of one of the few talks I've heard on it that's listen, pornography is here. It's going to be around us and it's in our lives. Here's how we can deal with it. Right? There's not a pretense of pretend like it doesn't exist and try really hard and bury your head in the sand. It was, hey people, most of you are going to have 14-year-olds that are going to run into this at some point. Let's figure out what to do when it happens.
Exactly.
Which I appreciated sort of the candor in that.
And I also like that she said, filters are great. Using technology to help is great, but the best filter is going to come from within. And I think
it's inside here. It's in here.
And I think some people could have interpreted that as saying what? So you're saying if I have a testimony, I won't feel tempted? Because there is a risk of assuming that. It's not saying that, but it's just as we lose ourselves in discipleship.
She talked about how, in the world there's so much that you can put around you, right? And you can be like, well, I've got a great filter for my computer, and then blah blah blah. And she's like, it's on cell phones, people. It's on your iPad. It's on your Kindle. It's on your computer. It's in a newspaper. It's on your, when somebody spends the night at a friend's house, it's on their mobile phone and their computer. And so, even if you build up the greatest fortress of filters and protection in your own home, all they got to do is, walk home from school with a buddy, and all that's negated.
Yeah,
right? And so if you don't build the filter inside, or actually the desire not to look at that stuff, you're never going to be able to succeed.
Yeah, as a bit of a side note, I actually read a study that it said something like 12% of Americans admit to watching porn on their mobile devices, at work, at their desk, just queuing it right up.
What else are you going to do at work?
So who's to
work?
Exactly. But like you said, it's a good point, though, yeah. We can access stuff anywhere, no matter how hard we try. And this should actually make us wish that everything were all video, that HTML5 did not take over, and everything was still Flash-based, and everybody in mobile devices flipped the bird at Flash. Then we wouldn't have this problem. Go back 5 years, and this would not be an issue. Boom.
That's true. That's actually true.
But then Elder Anderson spoke.
But I also thought that it was interesting that this came from a woman's perspective, right?
Which was
sort
good,
of a mother speaking, something like that. And she talked about that if you're caught in the trap of pornography, remember how merciful the Savior is, right? Because I feel like a lot of times sort of the sentiment in the church is that if you're in that cycle, you're bad and it's wrong and you're pretty much done. I think it's important that if you come across anybody that's struggling with that, that the focus is on keep trying and don't give up. Remember how merciful the Savior is. Remember the atonement. That sort of thing. It's not something that goes away incredibly easily just because of the accessibility of it. So, good talk.
I enjoyed it. Elder Anderson we loved because he said that we are more precious to God than trees, which is good.
What's the context on that?
Well, he's just talking about. Well, he talked about spiritual tornadoes, and his whirlwinds. His theming his talk around the whirlwinds of life was actually great.
Oh yeah, he had the lady whose trailer was moved on top of the other lady's trailer.
The lesson: live in a
didn't
trailer.
Even know.
Yeah, but he made the point to say that spiritual tornadoes can move you where you weren't planning on. Then he showed that graphic about how sort of the certain cells of a tree actually react when they face wind and other elements, and they get strengthened so they protect the other tree cells. It's very interesting. And so we're sort of the same way. We need to help strengthen ourselves against the winds of life. Spiritual tornadoes. They'll come out of nowhere. They're a challenge. But the key is...
Well, what I got out of that is that adversity will strengthen you. The theme was that the Lord built trees and like the molecular buildup of trees to handle that. So when the wind blows, the roots grow deeper. The tree will bend more, but it gets stronger. And then he spun out the quote, and God loves you infinitely more than a tree, right?
Yeah.
So we're kind of built that same way where we can handle a lot of this. The systems are in place for us to be okay.
Exactly. And he reminded us once again that changes in civil law do not change moral law. They like to pepper in all these gay marriage references kind of wherever they can. Yep.
So let's see some other ones. A powerful force that will subdue the winds of sin is called repentance.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the gospel of Jesus Christ, there is no room for bullying or ridicule.
No.
Jeff. Yeah, there you go.
All right.
And then he had that. He had the great mobile app too that we were very excited to see.
the Facebook app where like 2 lines of message take up your entire screen.
Sin has never been so accessible, insatiable, and acceptable. Was another quote.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Families are the treasure of heaven, Jeff. It's so true. Anyway,
I agree. Should we move on to President Eyring?
How is Hal?
He's doing well.
Hal Eyring.
He spoke a lot about covenants.
I've heard of those.
Okay. Well, what did you take away from this?
Let's see. A couple of mine were, let's see, God makes it attractive. So God makes it attractive to choose right by letting us feel the effect of choices. We will feel happiness in time or sadness in time, depending on how we choose. I'm often reminded, he gave a similar talk 10 years ago in the MTC around 2 Nephi 27. And I kind of felt like a lot of this was taken from those same thoughts, right? Where the light of Christ will help us feel and see right and wrong. And that there's a reason why the effects of our choices aren't seen immediately, right? It takes time. It's sort of like working out. I mean, you don't go to the gym and expect to be thin the next morning, right? Like if that were the case, then everybody would just go to the gym. So you sort of have to have that built in. You're going to make correct choices and put yourself on a path that's going to lead to goodness, and then eventually those feelings and the benefits of that choice come over time, which we forget about a lot, right? I mean, they're delayed for a purpose. If they weren't delayed, as Eyring said, Elder Eyring said, then they would not build faith. So we have to have them delayed.
There we go. That's pretty much what I took out of it.
What did you get out of that?
Well, I thought the power of covenants. I like it when they talk about covenants because you really think it's so easy to think of a covenant as just something that we just kind of do, and that's it. You do a covenant because it's coupled with an ordinance or whatever, and that's just part of life. But to really think about our covenants and what they mean and the way they strengthen us, there's power in covenants. I remember Elder Christofferson gave a talk a year or so ago all about covenants and the power that's in them. So it's a good reminder that covenants bring us, duties and purpose, and they help us understand things better. They galvanize us.
Yeah.
In many
every
ways.
Day and every hour, you can choose to make or keep a covenant with God, Jeff.
Yeah, but my favorite quote from President Eyring was definitely that Heavenly Father lets us experience the results of our actions, and that incentivizes us to be more obedient.
Wait, say that again?
Well, you said it before as well, that, Heavenly Father helps us choose the right by letting us feel the consequences of our choices, good or bad. And through that agency, we hopefully are grateful when we feel good about choosing the right, and we learn that poor choices drag us down and we want to avoid them. I mean, that is huge. That's a huge blessing that God has given us. Before Saturday after,
with God's help, we can feel that hope.
Yeah.
He said.
Before we get into some of the stuff for the Saturday afternoon session, I thought the missionary numbers were interesting, if anything. We only had about 10,000 more convert baptisms in 2013 as we did in 2012, but we had 30,000 more missionaries. So actually the number of baptisms per missionary dropped by about 1.5. It's just numbers. There's a lot of other things missionaries can do.
What are you saying, Jeff? They need us back out there?
Probably. I've had dreams before that I've been called on a mission again.
We would kill it. We would crush it. If they would let us have our beards.
But I remember I had one. I was called to my same mission. I was already married, everything. I had a dream. I got called back to the Spain-Barcelona mission. I had to go through the MTC, and I was like, I did this already. This is such a waste of time. I know what they're going to do. Why are they doing
I know all this.
It's like, just get me out there in the field. Why am I in the MTC again? This is horrible. So, anyway, I thought that was interesting. Even with the greater number of missionaries, they're actually getting...
Well, what do you think that is? Because they're all 18 and sniveling?
As you said it, Al, they just want to play Halo.
They just want to play Halo? Is that so much to ask?
No, I think hopefully it's because we are also focusing our efforts in other areas. Like, we don't ever have any numbers for real retention or activation. There's no way to quantify that, and we don't keep records of that. Hopefully that's better work that they're getting involved in, helping members be better missionaries, things like that. Missionaries can do a lot of work that is not strictly baptizing. That said,
they are called to do only the baptizing,
and
but they can do all
I
that
also
other work.
would hope that even if we have fewer baptisms, they're baptisms of greater, I don't want to say quality.
Yeah, better baptisms.
But
not like the baptisms you and I got.
You know what I mean?
Like the baptisms,
the
better ones.
Back in the late 80s, missionaries baptized.
Higher quality ones.
The church had way more baptisms years ago, but the retention rates were awful.
Not like the cheap souls that you and I would work with. More like the valued souls that everybody really wanted all along.
Everyone listening, raise your hand if you've ever experienced missionaries rushing people to baptism who were not ready.
Okay.
We all have. It's not that it still doesn't happen. It's my hope that we are being more patient and allowing people to be better prepared before they enter the waters of baptism. That's all.
All right, so moving on to Elder Nelson.
We gotta
Elder
move.
Nelson was, your faith should not be in a team, a brand, or a celebrity.
Good quote. Yeah, I like that.
Which just means that if you ever have cried and had your day ruined by a crummy sports team event, you're doing it wrong.
This was a good reminder for me because the Angels opened their season last week 0-3 against the Mariners, and I was not pleased. I said, this is what I stayed up till.
Why would you? Your faith was in the Angels.
I said, this is why I stayed up till 12:30. This is terrible. Terrible.
Let's see. In dealing with controversial issues, Jeff, we should first search for God's guidance.
Yeah.
And then he also said, admittedly, there have been times when atrocities have been committed in the name of religion. It just should not be.
Which is true.
His was an interesting take. He said, often, well, and it was sort of like, where do you look for good? One of the quotes he had was, "Look, a lot of us will look to our bank balance or to other human beings for guidance, and our faith needs to be in God and not in our, buffered bank balance that everything's going to be okay. We're gonna be fine because we got money, or we're gonna be fine because so and so said so." And Tim Robbins, all that jibber jabber. No, it's about God. Put your faith in God, and then let everything else sort of fall in around it.
There we go.
You have no input. Why don't you give me anything on these?
No, I'm trying to keep us moving along too. We don't have
faith is the antidote of fear, Jeff. Give me the highlights. Even if everyone is doing it wrong, will never be right. These are the things Elder Nelson taught.
Also, so many people look to their bank statement for peace.
I just said that.
I didn't hear it.
All right. Anyway.
Elder Scott spoke after that. I love Elder Scott.
Yeah, tell me about it.
He's just awesome.
I'm not going to do this one because I did all of the last one.
My notes were not as robust on this one, but I like that he spoke a lot about, of course, helping people, not just in missionary work, helping those who might struggle in the church, a lot of things along those lines. But, he said, ask people interesting questions. Be patient when waiting for responses and thoughts from people. All too often, if we're doing missionary work or say we have a friend whose faith is wavering, I think we expect to have the solution, to offer it to them, and then it'll be accepted right there in the moment, and everything will be fine after that. That's not the case. I mean, we might have people who spend years joining the church, people who fall away from the church for years before coming back. And but we need to ask probing good questions of them, help people to really take the time to analyze what they're experiencing and how they're feeling, and then be patient waiting for a response. The worst thing we can do is try to rush people in spiritual matters. It's very easy to want to do it because we're trying to hasten the work, as we say, but we also have to exercise patience. That's what I got most of.
When he talked about how his his grandma's loving, sort of persistent love and stuff was a big part of helping him sort of come back into the gospel. And the quote that I got out of him was, "We serve God by positively influencing others and serving them." Right? And so there's so much value in just being a positive influence for good in the world. And sometimes we undervalue that. So that was cool.
Exactly. Elder Hales gave one of the strong obedience talks of the conference.
Robert D.
Yes, he's not looking well either, I'm sad to say. He looked like he had an open wound on his head.
I saw that. Yeah, that was kind of weird.
But
it would have been great if he was wearing a fedora or something of that nature. It was just like, hello, everybody.
He'd pull a Marshall Erickson at his wedding.
One of the things that I thought was interesting out of him is he said, we're talking about obedience. He said, did Lucifer and his followers understand the consequence of their choice? And I kind of wonder that, right? Like maybe that's that. Well, and I don't know, but I mean that would be obviously a powerful tool of Satan if he could convince people that the consequence wasn't eternal and it wasn't as big of a ramification. And maybe Lucifer didn't understand the consequence of his rebellion, right? Mm-hmm. Like maybe that's all a thing, and they're sort of surprises at it. Which means for us, there's probably value in trying to understanding the positive of doing good things, maybe also taking some time to consider the negative of transgressing and sort of use that as a motivator or put in the back of your mind just so you are a little more careful.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and he talked about...
I don't know if that's what he's saying. That might be completely off base.
But the beauty of General Conference is not to just understand what was said, but what the Spirit says to you. So your insights are just. It's fine.
They can never be wrong now.
But a lot of stuff. Selective obedience, I thought, was an interesting thing that was discussed, which is very, very common. We all do it to a degree, rationalizing disobedience, choosing this and that, But he made the point, rationalizing disobedience still does not change the law. We can talk ourselves in circles all we want, but the law is there before us, regardless. And many mentions of Martin Harris as well, which is a great example in the scriptures of sort of pestering God enough that God says, fine, have it your way, and then bad things happen in the case of Martin Harris. So there you go.
Yeah, he also sort of offhandedly mentioned avoiding murder/abortion.
Yeah, I wouldn't be into that. Don't kill things.
Well, I think, man, that's another one of those things that, culturally, we get caught up in this wave of, maybe, abortion is wrong, but you sit and listen to enough people talk about it's a woman's choice and all that stuff, and there's a part of you that starts to forget that abortion is wrong. And so it's good to be reminded of some of that stuff.
So there we go. Claudio D. Zivic, or Civic, however he says it.
The most ridiculous accent of conference.
It's funny because he's just Argentinian. But he's like, I am here speaking to all of you today. It is so wonderful. I don't know. It was awesome.
Yeah, he's like an Argentinian. I don't think it's okay to make fun of these guys, but
really?
He was like his voice sounded robotish. If I had to program a robot to speak. That is exactly the result I would get.
I remember he spoke in my state conference here a couple of years ago, and most of us were pretty bewildered by whatever was supposed to be happening. Not just because of the way he spoke, but his remarks, we were just like, what is it going? I still don't know what was actually said in that meeting. I don't have a clue.
So the one quote I got out of him is, if we repent and accept correction, we can humble ourselves and draw closer to God.
So there we go. That's fine with me. Elder Zwick. Elder Zwick, I think, of all the 70s who spoke, Elder Zwick probably won. If it's a competition amongst the 70s.
What was his on?
Well, he told the story about how, there was smoke in his truck in Donner Pass, and his wife ran out. He talked about the importance.
What are you doing?
Yeah, so I love that he spoke about the importance of. He said it's more important to understand each other than to know who is right or wrong, because both he and his wife had good intentions, but had this whole episode where she's like, "I'm trying to save our son, you ninny," and he's just sitting there like, "It's an electrical problem. Don't worry about it. Nothing's going to happen." But being a guy,
I had it under control.
I believe you tweeted on this like Elder Zwick is outing the mentality. Oh no, that was a different talk. That's Elder Bednar. But did load. I actually liked it a lot. Lots of talk here about empathy, about ministering grace, really understanding people, knowing that Father in Heaven cares what we're thinking, just as we should care what others are thinking. And it's
careful, soft words can prove to be helpful in a situation where you may have differing views.
Yeah, we actually had one guy, Jared Tanner, JJ Tanner on Twitter, tweeted. He says, "As a psychologist, this is a great talk on communication, perspective taking, and empathy." And we forget that a big part of discipleship is actually learning how to be an effective communicator.
Yeah, he talked about how some communication is can become corrupted, right? Or will lean on corrupt communication.
Yeah,
and so we need to focus on positive, helpful things.
Absolutely, it was a good talk.
Who's right or who's wrong is less important.
Exactly,
than understanding.
It's a good talk. Elder Cook just loves genealogy. He's all about it.
Yeah, well, our doctrinal obligation is to our ancestors.
Yeah,
which I thought was interesting. Sort of a don't go to the temple just to go to the temple. Go to the temple to do work for people that you know.
And apparently now 85% of the church is within 200 miles of a temple, which is pretty impressive. Though if you crunch the numbers, that's still over 2 million people who are not within 200 miles of a temple. But that's great.
You did the math?
I did the math. I figured out what 85% of 15 million was, or 15% rather of 15 million. And
all right. Well, we're about at priesthood. I think we should just come back tomorrow and do the rest, Jeff.
You always say this. No, we're 40 minutes in. We got to power through. But I liked Elder Cook's remarks. I like the importance of genealogy work, and I've seen that more really for myself in this past year. I don't say I've done a ton of it, but I've definitely at least done more genealogy work than I have in the past. And I've enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed learning about it. My next step is I actually need to take names to the temple, which I've yet to do at all in my life. I've never taken my own names to the temple for anything. So it's a good reminder. And it's a good reminder as well that even youth, even YSA who aren't married and stuff should get involved in it. And I think it's very easy when you're in the singles scene to have doing your family history and temple work pretty low on the priority scale. So
I know it is for me, Jeff.
And you're not even a young single adult anymore. Poor guy.
You're a jerk. Let's see. Elder Oaks spoke next, and one of the things for him was,
"Here comes the boom."
He said, "Joseph." Well, that's exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Like, that's not helpful. Shut it, Jeff. But he talked about how Joseph Smith only received the keys of this dispensation.
Yeah.
A lot of times in our mind, we think that he got the keys for all dispensations. It's not true. He got the keys to this dispensation, which means that he has the keys to administer to this dispensation in the way that this specific dispensation needs to be administered. Meaning that perhaps in another dispensation or in the end or in heaven, whatever it is, right? Like the priesthood may be administered in a different way.
Yeah, it's like, take that, Miriam. Ha!
Sort of alluding to like women in the priesthood. I felt like that was a big...
And it was huge. I mean, we knew who he was talking to, but he was talking to all of us. And I think that's another great takeaway I had from this. It was very easy to say this is a response to ordained women type stuff. But if we push that aside, there was a lot in there for priesthood holders to understand about the way our priesthood should be exercised. I think especially in local leadership, to remind bishops and stake presidents of the priesthood that is exercised by women, and to make sure they're able to do that in their calling and not be one of those chump bishops who doesn't listen to his Relief Society president or whatever. And so it really goes both ways. And I'm still trying to...
Yeah, this was certainly as much a talk for men as it was for women.
Yeah. I need to watch it again. There was a lot of dense stuff there, and I'm still trying to structure it.
I feel like it would have been a very appropriate talk to be given in a session where women could have heard it as well.
Well, they could have. They just have to watch on the... See, and I've heard that one before. They say, where's the irony here? He's giving a priesthood talk, and it's not even a general session. But...
Well, no, but it's like... No, understand that just because they can access it, like they're not. It's not there for women, right? Women aren't supposed to go and watch priesthood session. They have their women's if this talk wanted to reach the women, they should have done it in a Saturday or a Sunday session.
Potentially, but if the topic is the priesthood, one would focus one's remarks on the priesthood in the appropriate session. When you
not if you're addressing women.
But he's not addressing women. He's just addressing the priesthood. Who says he's addressing women? He talked about the role of women in the priesthood.
When he addressed the role of women in the priesthood?
Well, right. I will give you this. He did go out of his way to say that he's grateful that priesthood session is now streaming publicly so that sisters who are watching could hear his remarks. So I will give you that. So obviously he was...
He also, in regards to women in the priesthood, he spoke a lot about and you alluded to this, the authority to act in the priesthood versus the keys of the priesthood, things like that. And then he said we need to leave the conversation about the rights of the priesthood and focus on the responsibilities of the priesthood.
That was a good one. I still think I still can see where affected parties might take issue, because you could say, the keys are one thing, the authority is a different thing, we exercise authority, but even if the bishop has the keys and the authority to sign off on us taking to administer the sacrament to somebody who's ill or who wasn't able to be at church, it's still just priesthood holding brethren who go and do that. It doesn't mean that the women can up and go administer the sacrament elsewhere, but that's just a quibble. I easily see where people are still going to have problems with something if they choose to. But I thought it was a solid talk. I need to read it once it's up and actually watch it again. There was dense stuff in there. Thank you, Elder Oaks.
Yeah, it was good. Let's see.
Elder Hallstrom spoke then.
What did Hallstrom say?
The one note I took down is that people say, that's just the way I am. And he basically said that's a stupid mentality. Nothing is just the way you are. You are as you choose to be. You might be born with a natural inclination to X, Y, and Z, but it doesn't mean that's just the way you are.
Sure.
That was my biggest one for him. Didn't he also say, was he the one who said, though, a smartphone doesn't make you smart? Or was that Elder Rid? That might have been Elder Rid.
Let me see.
I don't remember. I wrote it down somewhere, I thought. Oh yeah, that was Elder Rid. Moving on then. A smartphone doesn't make you smart. He was waiting all day to use that line.
He was so excited to feed that in.
Yeah. So... But I like his whole talk was on just don't be stupid with the internet for the most part, which was actually a very good lesson, especially for the youth, and that was where he was directing his remarks.
Let's see.
Like
every
Snapchat.
day the world seeks to influence your desires, and he's sort of, it's a nod to marketing. Like everybody you come in contact with, everything there is seeking to influence what you do. He said you need to develop the ability to see beyond the moment. He was good.
Yeah, that was good. Each click has a memory, which is a good point.
Yeah, sort of he knows what's up with the NSA.
Okay. Move along, Al. Move along. President Uchtdorf talked about Rip Van Winkle.
Old Van Winkle, who slept through the Restoration or the Revolution.
Slept through the Revolution.
And then we were encouraged not to sleep through the Restoration.
Yeah, don't sleep through it. It's still going on, people. It's not done.
What? I thought it already happened.
He said it's still going on. That's why we can't sleep through the Restoration. He gave 3 reasons why we get sleepy: selfishness, addiction, and competing priorities.
Yeah. So self-service over selfless service.
That's a good one.
He said, when we choose self-service over selfless service, we lose. I'm paraphrasing.
That also had the great...
when he mentioned selfie as the word of the year, is that what you're thinking
Well,
of?
I was thinking of selfie. I was also thinking about the story with when they got to go on Air Force One, and President Monson was just like, Dieter, don't even think about it. That was unrelated, but I was just remembering that little part right there. It was funny.
That was a great moment.
It was hilarious.
When one of the apostles of our church tried to steal our first one.
He just wanted to touch some levers and some things on it. And President Uchtdorf's like, right when I was about to do it, President Monson just says, Dieter, don't even go there.
Story of my life. I feel like that's whenever I want to do anything, the prophet is there saying, Alan.
And really, President Uchtdorf's response could have been, you knew what I was when you called me to this, all right? But then...
You knew what I was when you picked me up.
But then Elder Hallstrom would say to him, that's just the way I am is not an excuse, President Uchtdorf. Got to change, son. Can't just be that way. Boom.
Oh, he was good. Uchtdorf was strong this conference. I feel like he's really been performing well.
I agree. He's settled into his role very nicely, and he chugs along and gives some pretty good talks.
We should focus... Oh, was this...
exclusively on President Uchtdorf. That's it. No, what?
No, the next morning he did gratitude.
Next morning was gratitude. We're still in priesthood session. President Eyring talked about heroes.
And prayer.
Heroes and prayer.
Yeah, I liked his hero talk. Again, was about priorities and stuff, right? How he had that guy that he went to college with. It was his priesthood hero, and because he took the time and helped him, was just this great example. And I was sort of reminded myself of where often I put my time and efforts in life, and it's not as often in my priesthood opportunities as it should be. So there's a lot of chance for us to be those priesthood heroes or go and be those great examples for people that we don't recognize. And man, like I can think of my own life. I had Brother Galbraith was my teacher's quorum advisor. Phenomenal example. Made a couple of comments to me that have directly impacted my life ever since. And what it would take for me to have that in somebody else's life. And I just wish. We should be better.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And oftentimes, even in the priesthood or out of the priesthood, wherever else, these kinds of leaders often don't even know they're being a hero to us. They don't, and that's the good thing. We're not looking for a hero worship or anything like that, but we're just trying to do what's right. And anything we can do to be an example to other people or help them in any way is a great thing. And usually it's shocking when you find out that you have meant something to somebody else when you had no idea.
Yeah, no, it really is.
I mean, yeah, it's even honestly. I'm not trying to be self-congratulatory, but it's happened to us on this show where I've had people send us emails or have remarks and just say, "You have no idea how much your show helps with my recent convert husband," or just simple stuff like that.
Our show?
And honestly, yeah, and we'll sit there our show, but great, that's great, and I hope everyone has those heroes and that we can all be heroes to other people, for sure.
And he also talked about doing our alms in secret sort of thing.
Yeah.
As heroes and or as you choose heroes, don't look for people that are outwardly putting on a display.
Heroic. Yeah, pretty much. President Monson, my favorite line for President Monson's talk, have the courage to defy the consensus.
Yeah, those census guys are pushy. Said, courage, not compromise, brings the smile of God's approval. Again, sort of that same obedience theme of listen, people, it's not going to get more popular. Our stance is not going to get more popular. Which makes me wonder if we're digging in our heels a little bit on gay marriage even more, to the point where we're I think socially the push is just turn the other way, look the other way, and pretend like it doesn't exist. I mean, obviously we can't win it in a fight, so maybe if we pretend like it doesn't exist, we'll be okay. And I'd wager that's probably not where it's going to end up. which I struggle with still. I don't know the right way for all of this to be distilled into our religion, with gay marriage and that kind of stuff. But like, it's not going to be too much further down the road before, like, a great example is the CEO of Mozilla. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, he was not actively campaigning against anything, but he was a member of an organization or donated to an organization that stood for something else and or different than what people thought they should. And so the time is coming that I think
the funny thing though is
more in our face.
Not to dwell on the Mozilla thing, but the really sad thing is he donated that money at a time when the majority of public opinion in California and in the United States and in the Obama administration all were not in favor of gay marriage. So 6 years ago, what he did was actually what the majority was thinking. Now it's not, which is even sadder. Well, whatever.
But like, imagine a Mormon CEO at the top of a Mozilla organization. I mean, it would be heresy.
Well,
how dare they?
Yeah, I saw a pretty good infographic that went around that said, so now we know that Mozilla's hiring standards should basically employ, and it said like no Mormons, no evangelicals, no Muslims, no Orthodox Jews. Like this, just it rattled off this list of all the people who are clearly prohibited from working at Mozilla now. Moving on, much to do still. Well, we're getting there though. Sunday morning session, President Uchtdorf, gratitude, excellent talk on gratitude, especially that gratitude is a disposition. It is a way of life. And instead of being grateful for things, we should be grateful in our circumstances. I love this.
Yeah, he was so good, man. His was one of those where I'd actually just that morning been praying because I've been in a position lately where I've been very satisfied with life in large part, but there's certain things that get me down, like all of us have, right? Where we kind of beat up on ourselves about stuff, and man, I was just finding myself dwelling on those for a long time and was not letting it go very well. And so like I would look at my whole life and all I could see is the 2 or 3 flaws in it instead of the overwhelming great. And his comment of gratitude will take away, what did he say? It was bitterness and sadness and hopelessness. All of that can be removed by being grateful. It was like one of those aha moments, right?
Yeah.
Went right to my journal and was like, man, I know there's good stuff in my life. Why can't I think of it right out the gate? Like I need to have this just right on the tip of my tongue always because, man, it helps a lot.
And I find one of the things that helps us to develop that more and more, at least in myself, to remember to be very grateful when praying. But like at any time for anything, not just like even if you're just blessing the food, take the time to give real thanks for the food. Be thankful that if you have food in abundance, that you're able to eat even good things, not just, eating for mere survival. Whatever these things might be, I've found in my life to go out of your way to offer God extra thanks whenever you have the chance.
The quote,
it helps
I don't
cultivate
believe
that mindset. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, the quote, I don't believe God expects us to be less grateful in times of trial than in times of abundance. I think it's important to remember. I mean, we excuse ourselves from our responsibilities or from our inclinations of being grateful a lot of times when things get really hard, right? A friend of mine that I grew up with, her house burned down while she was at conference, right, on Sunday, like burned to the ground, crazy. I mean, it's just nuts to me to see. And to see her reaction to it has actually been really encouraging because everything is about how they're safe and how grateful she is for the community around her and the family support that she's gotten and the donations that are helping them get by and outpouring of love and all that stuff. And man, I think if I was in that situation, I would just be devastated. I would just I wouldn't be able to remove the lens from myself long enough to see all the great things in my life. So important,
super important. Good talk. One of the better ones, I thought. Elder Ballard, he told us that funny story about how he met his wife and dated her and yada 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 yada.
He is the one true missionary,
living return missionary. He reminded us once more. To avoid calling the church the Mormon Church or the LDS Church. To use the church's full name because that's out of respect, and that's for the sake of publicly declaring what our church is called, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I believe this is important, but I do wonder what this relationship needs to be in the world of social media, SEO, and things like that, because the bottom line is, if I say Mormon Church on something as opposed to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, for the most part, I'm gonna be more visible in many ways because that's sort of just the parlance. that everyone is using. That's not to say it's appropriate,
Yeah.
but I think we need to find a healthy way to transition from saying LDS Church, Mormon Church, and it is our responsibility to use the full church name because that can help the general public consensus, know our church. Like we call the Catholic Church the Catholic Church. I mean, that's its only real name, but we don't, how do you say this though? But they call it the Catholic Church. And that's normal, even though the full name of the church is actually like the Holy Roman Apostolic Catholic Church of the Lord or whatever else, right? I don't know. Where do we find that line? Point is, try to do your best and use the church's full name.
He also said, we are blessed when we bear testimony. The Lord will not let us down. He'll remember. He'll write it down in heaven.
They will.
Bear those testimonies.
I liked this one, though. Ask the missionary, have the missionaries come teach your family. Ask the missionaries what they're actually studying and have them share it with you. Which is...
Having the conviction to make a change is worth nothing unless you actually follow up on that conviction.
There we go.
And actually do it.
Sister
cool.
Sister Jean A. Stevens from the primary presidency. She's the one who a year ago gave the first ever prayer by a woman in conference. And I liked a lot of she just kind of talked about Moses 139. What's God's main purpose? For our exaltation, basically. And how do we do that? We find peace in turmoil. One woman who said, I would never have asked for this trial, but I would never give it away either.
Huh. So I couldn't find many notes in her.
I didn't have a ton either, but I enjoyed it overall. Gary E. Stevenson.
The Bish.
And by the way, we're on the Sunday morning session now, though, by the way, for anyone who missed it. Gary E. Stevenson really loves the Mormon Olympians. I hope they gave their approval for all of this. I mean, it was Torah Bright and Noel Picus Pace and some bobsledder all day, every day.
Oh, man. Yeah, he was all about her. He said front side rodeo 720. Wasn't that his quote?
Yeah, and I was like, that sounds...
Oh, it's a dream.
But the thing we don't want to forget is the actual very good concept of the 4 minutes of prep he was talking about that everyone has, and you don't know when your 4 minutes are going to be up. So prepare. Oh, yeah. Get in there. Utilize your time. Be thoughtful. And prepare. I wrote down this one. I don't know
Clock
if you
is
did.
ticking.
He said prepare thoughtfully for the receiving of for the receiving of ordinances. And that's a good point. Because there's been many times in my life where I feel like I have received an ordinance and viewed it just as the next logical step and not necessarily taken a step back and really been thoughtful about what was happening. Like when I went from a teacher to a priest, I was just pumped to be 16. That was it. It's not like I was...
Yeah.
I wasn't really thinking like, wow, this is really cool. This means I actually get to bless the sacrament. What an amazing thing I'm being allowed to do. And that wasn't on my mind at the time, so... Prepare thoughtfully for these things.
Let's see. Then we had Elder Bednar, who gave the wonderful imagery of the guy driving the truck, gets stuck in the snow.
Yeah, this is great.
He says, well, I'm going to load it up anyway, puts the wood in there, and then that load gets the traction so that the truck can get out of there. Two things I took away from that. One was oftentimes when we get stuck in the mire, the last thing we want to do is go and do our duty. Right? Go and actually cut the wood and fill the truck. And so, we avoid that burden almost altogether because we seek the easiest path. And a lot of times that ends up hurting us down the road. The other thing the thing that I took away from that was the load or the things that are hardest in our lives are often the ones that pay the biggest dividends, which I think we agree on. You look back at missionary work or, in life, very rarely is it the easy things that make a meaningful difference. And so look for the hard things as often they pay off big.
Yeah, like really ask ourselves, is your load the type that's creating traction? You could really argue that frivolous stuff and the things with which we concern ourselves might not carry enough weight in the spiritual sense to give us traction. So, think about what is filling up the bed of your truck.
He had that great moment, too, where he talked about... how the Savior knows our pain. He went through everything perfectly. It's just so good to have an apostle remind us of that, I feel like, where a lot of times we get, I'm being single as a 31-year-old. I mean, it's a hard place to be sometimes, and I get caught up in how I do, man. I get caught up in like how my situation's different, and you get this pity party going on. And it's good to remember that the Savior has been through all of it, right? Like his atonement is complete. And so don't ever let yourself wallow in self-pity that way. Turn to the Lord.
Yeah, it's for more than just sin. The atonement is for all sorts of things. So remember that. And I also like one of the last things he said was be agents who act rather than objects who are acted upon, which is a great reminder. I mean, the gospel is all about being proactive. And if we just sit around and want to get tossed around by the waves of life, we're probably not going to be successful as disciples, let alone even as just humans. There's a good chance. The gospel is about taking initiative and getting stuff done. Taking an active role. President Monson talked about love. There's that story.
Love.
There's that plane.
Be considerate.
There was that plane that had to pick up the kid, and they just flew all around Alaska until they could find somewhere to land, right?
Yeah, the 250 miles south of Anchorage.
450 miles south of Anchorage, which I should note is just the Pacific Ocean. I don't know where these people were. There's not some island chain right there.
One of the comments he said was, be careful not to destroy someone's confidence with a misplaced word or something like that. I think of casual, offhanded comments at church that people will often make that hurt feelings and things like that.
Or 40% of what you say to me, for example.
Or 40%. But there's that 60% that's really good, Jeff.
No, that's just...
I got 60%.
No, it's really 50% good, 10% neutral.
Blame keeps wounds open, Jeff. Only forgiveness heals, which is also what he said.
Fair enough.
Ha-ha!
Aha! All right.
Let's see.
So last session, Sunday afternoon, President Packer.
Boyd K. Packer, I think we might have heard. I mean, this sort of felt like
a farewell
address.
Last
of all, this is the testimony I give, right?
Yeah.
It was pretty much a 15-minute testimony of the Savior.
Yeah, exactly.
That he lives, that he's real. He quoted Doctrine and Covenants 76 and then said, their words are my words, that he lives.
I know. I have to.
Strong.
He's been kind of scraping by for a while, so we always wonder when is going to be our last time with him. I don't know, but this did feel like a bit of a just going out, final testimony sort of thing. So I hope not, but we'll see.
Yeah,
it's good. It made me think of Doctrine and Covenants. What is it? 132, and yeah, exactly what you said. Just testimony of the Savior and of the concrete principles of the gospel.
Then we got Elder Willie Walker.
I took no notes.
On Willie?
I have no notes on my thing. I have none.
The only one I have is, I pray that each of us will live true to the faith that our parents have cherished.
Well, that's perfect. That's great. I love it.
That was all I got.
I love it. Well, good for him. Elder Perry, what do you think were his main points? Let's see. What was his overall?
Wait, wasn't Willie Walker, he had like a camping analogy or something anyway?
I don't remember. I do not remember a thing. Even though we just watched that recap before we started. I do not remember. But I do remember that Elder Perry spoke in many ways, once again, on obedience. But one thing I love that he said is he said, the Lord speaks to us in a still small voice out of respect for our agency, which was a great way that I've never really thought about things. The fact that if he didn't respect our agency, he would just smash us on the head with revelation and insight, right? Get our attention even if we're not paying attention. But he respects our agency enough that he requires us and encourages us to seek out those answers and to be receptive enough to the Spirit for them, which was just that was an insight that I just loved, that he respects our agency enough to speak to us quietly.
Yeah, that's actually a great one. Some of the other stuff he said obedience is not passive.
No.
Right?
And obedience is an emblem of our faith. That was his other good one.
Yeah. And it's an emblem of our faith and a wisdom and power of a higher authority.
Al, it sounds to me that the cops are the fuzz. What's going on over there? You okay?
The fuzz, and there's a chopper coming.
Okay, good deal.
I'm just kidding. Today's complexity demands greater simplicity.
Oh, I like that one too, because it's not that because we don't want complex solutions just because there are complex problems, which was good. Last few here, Elder Corbridge of the 70. There will always be opposition. Good to know. That's what I...
Can you do his accent?
Elder Corbridge? He was an American.
Who's the one I'm thinking of?
We're going to get there.
I do Cottis.
Yeah, we're... So, I don't know if you have anything from Elder Corbridge or Elder Te from the Philippines. Do you have anything from those two?
Elder Te said, we get really involved in earning money.
Yeah.
We have to recognize when we have enough and don't chase temporal needs more than spiritual needs.
I like that one. He really asked us, like, what are our treasures? Don't be materialistic.
Yeah. Corbridge. The thing I had on Corbridge was that there will always be opposition to the truth.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he had that great quote where he talked about how get behind, the gaping jaws and drama and clouds of uncertainty, and at the bottom of that we have the Son of Man, who's descended below them all, right? But behind opposition, you'll often find truth. So
there we go.
Don't be expecting it to get easier for us. And now, Idukatis, who talked about how your bosom will burn within you.
Idukaitis, who is Brazilian of Lithuanian descent. People were very confused by him.
Fascinating accent.
But I like it. I like that he said we have to believe we will receive revelation. I don't know if he meant any extra inflection there, but for myself, I felt like, yeah, it's easy sometimes to... There's been plenty of times in my life when I might be praying for something, but there's this nagging part in the back of my mind that's like, do you really think you're going to get an answer? And and that happens to a lot of us, I think. So have faith that you will receive an answer. Maybe not right away, but you will receive an answer.
Okay, then we got D. Todd Christofferson talks about how resurrection was a big deal.
The apostles ran to the tomb. They ran there. They didn't just like stroll on over after they stopped by
Jeff,
Panera.
every movie we've ever watched about that shows them running.
Well, I hope so.
And then
just strolling by.
Then President Monson gave us a solid, the church is true, God lives, he loves us.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Yeah, have a good time.
It was solid.
Peace out.
Anyway, Jeff, it was one of those conferences that I felt like I finally got, I got some very meaningful answers for me. And so very, very meaningful conference for me and my family. It was a delight to sit through.
Good. Me too. I loved it a lot. I find as I get older, I enjoy conference more, and it also goes by way faster. I don't know what that is too. But like when I was young, I'd sit there and just be like, oh my gosh, 2 hours more. And it felt like a very long weekend. Now I just feel like it blows by before I even know what happened.
It's a dream.
But it was great.
It is a dream.
For those of you who have stuck around for this entire episode, thank you for that. And we hope you will allow us to reward you by sharing this podcast with your friends and visiting us at thisweekinmormons.com and sending us an email, contact@thisweekinmormons.com. We love hearing from you. It's very kind of all of you.
Yeah, you know us from Twitter @TheRealTwim or on Facebook, facebook.com/thisweekinmormons, and come say hi.
Come say hi. Look out for Sunday School Bonanza, which will be kicking up once again now the conference is over, our Gospel Doctrine podcast, and Third Hour of Power, which we do with This Mormon Life to help us get through the Teachings of the Presidents of the Church manual, which is very exciting as well. We do a lot of fun stuff over here, and we're glad that you're a part of it. And with that, I throw down my pen.
Have a great week, Jeff.
Thank you, Al. You too. Appreciate you all taking the time to listen in, folks, and hope you'll join us for our next episode of This Week in Mormons. Twim out.